All right. Hey, everybody. So we've got a topic on hand: Headspace, managing your perspective. Um, yeah. So, how do we want to go about managing our perspective?
Well, I came through this because I'm sick right now, as it's obvious in my voice. Over the last week, it's amazing how differently I feel about everything when you're focused upon like just the basics of what you need to do and just the energy you need to use for what you need to use it for. And I realized how nothing else mattered. I
Hmm.
realized how like the politics stuff, even though I'm a political junkie, I listen to podcasts all the time in general. I didn't care about any of it. I because all that really mattered was just managing the kind of energy I had based upon my health and different things, difficulty to breathe and all sorts of stuff. It just makes me think about how, let me perspective, pardon me, my perspective is always very important in life, and it's weird to think we always pretend when we're feeling good, we always pretend like everyone is able to see everything with the perfect eyes,
Hmm.
with, and so when we're talking at people, we're not realizing everyone's little microcosms of not giving a shit because of various other focuses, and so
Hmm.
um, it's hard to it's hard because it takes levels and levels of discipline and kind of doing it anyway. But in order for you to be able to, but there's certain thresholds in which you can't. But like I think our goal should, in general, my general idea is basically, I think our goal should be to try to um, actually understand when we have that mental space available to us, so that we can set standards for our regular lives and for so we can try to hold ourselves to a standard even when we're not feeling our best, and that we don't just rely on how we feel. And so that's the general idea
Hmm.
of what I was thinking was important, because it's really hard. Like when I don't feel like doing anything. It's just as simple as like I don't want to put on pants or something. It comes from whatever level you're coming from, up to the idea of like if you care about an issue so much, that that issue makes you feel a certain way, or solves a certain need that you have in your heart, or whatever else, that facts don't matter, other people's feelings don't matter. And I just want to know how I want to try to help manage the space of where, because we're all guilty of not being receptive because of those reasons. And I want to try to get a place where we can talk about that, I guess, where, because like it's just profound to me right now, because it's just happening where like I'm having to put myself together to do this, even though I don't really feel like it, because there's a certain point you have to, if you kind of set standards, if you can do it, it's not better if you feel like doing it. If you kind of set it like we agreed to meet together, so as long as I'm not feverish, or if I have a voice, I should try to keep up with it. So
Hmm.
that's where this idea came from. Is there anything that makes you think about?
Interesting. Yeah. I guess kind of when you were talking about like it's basically what I kind of took from it, at least in some parts, is like you kind of you were sick
Yeah,
basically, and you didn't even really have the capacity or the care to put that mental energy into all of this stuff that you otherwise would.
right.
And so it's almost kind of like it's a privilege
It
to be
is.
upset.
Health is a privilege. It's
Well, not that health, not necessarily. I mean, health is certainly it's
yeah,
it's a, it's a privilege, but having these concerns of us, like when we hop on this show and we talk about all of these
yeah.
issues, these are really privileged conversations
They are. And people
because
don't like hearing the idea of first world problems. But I guess you could
right.
say that is what this kind of means, but I'm trying to break it down in a way that's not just so dismissive.
Right, and I don't think it is, but I don't think it is dismissive. It's just kind of it's one of those things where because it's about managing your perspective and being able to tap into the times where like to see that if you can understand that these conversations are a privilege, then you can kind of set those things aside and you can be a person.
Yeah.
You can think about yourself, you can take care of yourself. um I think that's a really and we're probably we shouldn't have to wait until we're sick to the point
Right.
where, oh man, I don't even have any energy to think about any of this stuff. I'm more focused on breathing. I'm more focused on my own health. I'm
Right.
focused on really more important things, right? So when we kind of get on here and we talk about um, all the problems that we see in the world, it doesn't. I don't think it minimizes those problems at all. Um, it's just a something where what we probably need to do is have the ability to take a moment in our own personal time, which I'll admit I do not do very much at all. Um, is to take some time to kind of just think about yourself, think about and trying to get. I've actually thought about it relatively recently. Of man, like it's almost like my go-to. Like it's so strange to me. Like my go-to. It's weird to say like a relaxation thing is to pick apart systems, think about systems that are current cultural systems that are in place right now and that are ever evolving, um, and pick those things apart. And it's like those things are they're important. It's hard. It's almost like a playground though. But it's strange that I mean, that's something that's completely divorced from me as a person. It's not. It's probably not beneficial in the headspace kind of a thing. But it's interesting to me that that it's kind of a almost like an escape. Like
You know,
I'll think about stuff just to go to sleep. I'll think
yeah.
about this stuff.
So, an idea that is recurring in life of things that I hear messaging from different people. There's like, Joe Rogan is the easiest name to say. He talks about how you have to have hardships in order to appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Like that's what he says. It's a good idea to work out. Just punish your body. Just punish yourself like that in some ways. And you have to have kind of adversity in order to really appreciate other things and also to overcome obstacles.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's good to have certain standards that you do whether you want to or not, because like it's like you do them anyways, and there's virtue to it, not in just trying to be like doing the right thing per se, but like you're overcoming something like your own self. You're overcoming your own desire to just take the easy path and not do something. And so I guess um, part of what I get out of all this is that you're not always going to have a clean, perfect perspective or a nice air conditioned room to think about things, but you need to kind of put your life in order and your self together in a way that you can manage knowing that brain space even when you're not in that brain space,
Mm-hmm.
like knowing kind of certain standards to hold up to and be like, and you just kind of you just kind you got to trust you got to trust yourself from when you're in a good place. So it's really hard with everything because everyone wants to go on a diet, everyone wants to work out, everyone wants to do certain things, and then they don't hold themselves to a standard, and that's the struggle for everybody. But it's
Yeah.
I
I
guess,
mean, we kind of bounce around, right?
yeah,
Like, or the goal, in a sense, at least for us, I would almost imagine, is to kind of bounce around, just like make sure that we can reserve some personal time, some personal space for ourselves to have to kind of check in, right? But we still want to discuss and talk about and think about and develop positions and intellectually, flex our brains
yeah,
on the current events. But though the current events can be there, depending on how the current events are being pumped out, we can have very different very different kind of feelings, very different kinds of results.
Yeah.
Um,
Especially if they hit us in just the right way, such that we don't,
yeah,
if we don't have a clear view on how to deal with all these things. Like sometimes someone will put things that trigger you or whatever you want to say. There are things that you haven't, if you're triggered by things that are commonly knowable, that means that you haven't dealt with. You haven't created a path to deal with these type of things in a non-reactive type of way. It's, I, I think that it should be everyone's goal to not be triggered by normal things that happen in general that are regular,
normal
they're
things,
repeatable. Right. Normal things. Right.
normal things.
I mean, I
Yeah,
mean, I think the word trigger is usually used these days derogatorily because it's referring to like pet peeves in politics that like you don't like. Well, there's these, there are like regular things that you should be able to manage, honestly. Um,
yeah. I mean, like, okay, so like
it shouldn't,
something that,
you shouldn't have that as an excuse. I'm saying you shouldn't have that as an excuse
yeah,
to be crazy or to have or just overreact or to just try to bury somebody and be mean to somebody because you're triggered. Therefore, I am morally upset here. So therefore, I have to do this.
mm,
I think it's better for people to come to grips and be able to deal with that rather than using triggered as an excuse. I don't know if I'm all over the place with this. This
no,
is I didn't.
yeah, you're, I think you're pretty on point. I'm just kind of, I'm thinking of other things kind of that orbit it, some things that kind of surround it. Like, okay, so there's things that trigger people, and there's things that are normal things that trigger people. And then I think that there's things that are like ever developing that turn into, um it kind of almost like creates a narrative that is not just triggering, but like it paints a kind of a picture that can get you in a mode of like you typically
Fight or
fear,
flight.
fight or flight
Mhm.
kind of a thing. So like, kind of a to kind of pivot a little bit, but still on topic is, um I don't know if it's just me. I don't remember there being as much of this kind of like disturbing violence, um since pre 2020. I mean, when I see, I'm in like disturbing violence and crime and there's just things that are happening that, I don't remember seeing it at this kind of a level, and it kind of gets me really upset, and I'm just like, oh my god, like you kind of see stuff. I mean, there was something in Ohio, I think it might have been Ohio, where people were doing some, they were in their cars like doing spins or something like that, and I guess that they hit some guy's car. The guy got out of his car and he was like, what the hell are you guys doing? You just hit my car. And then a mob of people just went out and they just beat the crap out of him,
I've
right?
barely heard any of this, but like I said, I've been unplugged,
It's
focusing on myself for this
Yeah,
week.
I
So I
mean,
don't remember. I
this happened fairly
remember it being crazy.
recently, right? And there's a video of it, and I mean, the guy gets like knocked out, like he just gets attacked, massive amounts of people. They just, the guy's knocked out, right? And he's punching him in the belly, punching him in the face, and then he eventually kind of comes to, and he kind of, there's a crowd of people, you can't really see much, but it seems he has moved positions, and then they just beat him again, and it was
Well,
just
that's
kind of one of
crazy.
this, it was just such a horrific scene, and then
It's
I
like it's
see,
a video game or something. It's like it's not a real
yeah,
person there. They're just beating on this video game character.
yeah, and then I see, you see these other ones of like what's happening in schools, like public schools. I don't know that this is anything, I never even heard of these things happening where teachers are getting in fights with their students, or their students are fighting their teachers, or they're beating up their teachers, um or even students. Like, I know that there's been fights and stuff at school. I'm not opposed to, fights at school, but it seems like these kinds of fights that are happening now are going really far. Like these are not just like, hey, you disrespected me. I'm gonna fight you, and our beef is gonna be done. This is like I'm knocking you out, and I'm continuing to punch you. And like
Yes.
there's like levels of hatred in these attacks that are happening in these schools.
It's probably having to do with our mindset that we've
Right,
nurtured lately. Like
right.
the idea of entitlement and just like it's all about us, it's all about your truth, and if it's, I mean, I just think that's a bad focus is to have everything about yourself. You
Right.
know, everyone's favorite person to themselves. I mean, I
Yeah.
get it. I get stuck. I'm thinking myself constantly, but like you have to try to you have to make an effort every day to know that you're not the center of the universe.
Well, and so the other thing about it is that I think that what that is doing is it's effectively breeding this, and I've heard it, um, I've heard it a little bit before. Is and I've talked about it a bit before. Is this societal distrust, where it's kind of we're now in an environment where people don't trust each other. So it's kind of started off with like people don't trust the police with the whole black BLM and all those protests
Mhm.
that turned into riots and all that stuff. And it was like, okay, now the police are the bad guys, so we can't trust the police. But now that there's no police to take care of things, to kind of handle the crime, now that that's gone, it's kind of like now it's hitting the people. The people are effectively the victims of all of this stuff, and now we don't have trust in each other. We don't have trust in our neighbor.
Yeah.
So then you have somebody who goes and rings a doorbell and gets shot, right? Or somebody pulls into a driveway and they get shot. Somebody, a kid drops their. I mean, this isn't like the kid dropping their basketball into the yard and getting
Right.
shot isn't quite the same thing, but or there's the recent one of, and I don't know if this is even if this is I mean this is something that I think creates this is an event that took place that I think creates societal distrust is when a father goes out to his backyard and says, hey neighbor, can you stop shooting your rifle, I got a kid who's sleeping. And then the guy goes into his house and shoots up his family. And it's like,
Yeah. You don't tell me what to do. Yeah.
well,
So
yeah.
they're gonna.
And so it's kind of like, and this guy, he's on the run still, and it's just kind of like, okay, we have hit a state in our country that is so distrustful of one another that, and it's interesting because Biden was supposed to kind of like come in and calm tensions, and
It's
it in
cultural
some,
corruption. We're corrupting the American spirit. It's still better than a lot of places in the world, and we're just not used to seeing it. It's just like wild. Just think about what it is. All the
yeah,
stuff that you hear, the stuff that you see in movies, from back in the 30s and 50s and stuff like that. Even though it was kind of a caricature and not always exactly like that, it was kind of in spirit like that. Really, I mean, like the type of standards you had and type of like, so well, like it's like yeah, you hate the man, but you don't want to see him hurt. It's like they used to
yeah,
have different type of ideas about
yeah,
what was acceptable in society, and that has migrated more and more. Partially because there's more and more people, and as you have more and more people, there's more and more stress, and things change. Another thing is just us all being online all the time, and the whole self-focus thing. There's a lot of things you're just building up that are unfortunately kind of changing stuff, and we in order for us to counter it, actively we have to actively try to change it and set standards instead of just getting out of ways like, oh, you do you. I don't the you do you scenario is has been the story of my life of what I've done forever. But
yeah,
I think it's flawed in the long run because you just let people get away with more and more and more and more and more until there's no right and no wrong. It's just whatever you feel like. Then you have chaos and you have people that because everyone is right in all scenarios. So therefore, there's never anyone in the wrong. So you're always all on board with resolving it because you're right in like so and then you have people that have less sensibilities that just decide they're just gonna kill somebody over it, you know. It,
Yeah.
so yes, it is an evolution that has happened because regular Joes like me are have just been okay with letting it just hey you do you and I'll do me and I'll just stay out of your business all this time. I just think we need to stand up for a standard. We need to set standards and say standards are okay. And then there are certain things that we will accept that people do, but it's not okay. You can't, but we can't just label everything as equally okay. And I think that's where it's got to start. And I don't know how we do that. I don't know the steps to making that happen. Um, I mean, it'd be great if the media in general, like of all sources, would just decide that it is okay to have some sort of standards of behavior that we're not I'm not
Yeah.
talking about canceling and stuff, but like, like the old
Yeah.
school ideas of like, it's probably not a good idea to sexualize children. It's probably not a good idea to have 50 sexual partners by the time you're 20 years old. There's certain ideas that like, yes, you can allow for people to do that in
Yeah.
society, but don't press it as a thing. Don't press
Yeah.
it as a thing like this is a good. This is like this is you showing your freak flag fly. I think that there are certain standards that are good for a reason, and we should try to enforce those. So we should try not enforce them. That's the wrong word for it, but we should
Promote.
try to promote them and
Yeah.
have everyone look up to them as a standard.
Yeah. So I wanna play something. It's a 22-second clip
Okay.
um, of a fight, and what's really interesting about this fight is that it when we see all of these videos and everything is absolutely crazy, right? There's a video of two women, two girls who are fighting on the street, and the way that they fight is done in a way that kind of is like it's almost a promotion of like, okay, if you're gonna fight, like maybe do it more like this, like. And it's strange that we're in
So
a
they're
state.
performing. They're performing at the same time.
It's not a performing. It's kind of like, look, neither of these people want the other person, like it's like there's honor, there's respect, there's I don't know what's on the line for these people, but they clearly don't want to like destroy one another, right?
Okay. Okay.
So
Well,
so here we go. Okay, it's 22 seconds. She lets her up.
they're practicing how to actually fight. They want to
They're
actually
they're
learn how to do
fighting.
it.
They're fighting, and then they break it up, and they get close, and then they're like, okay, like there's no pulling hair, there's no dragging and slamming. They're throwing. They're fighting. They're fighting,
They're
right?
probably friends, and they're like, no, I would kick your butt. No, I would kick your butt. Huh? Let's do it, huh? And then whatever
Maybe
they
so.
decided, just hey, yes, let's put it on YouTube. Let's do this. So we're not looking to kill each other. Let's just do that. I don't get.
Right. I mean, who knows? Who knows? But what's like, I don't have any context for it. But the interesting thing is like in a world where when you scroll through these other like these the fights and stuff, you kind of see the kind of stuff that's happening. The stuff is so crazy that when you come across this,
Yeah,
it's almost like this is nice to see,
yeah, it is. It
you
is.
know.
It's still
There's
weird
something
that they would.
wrong with that. There's something wrong with that, but it's still kind of like, I guess it kind of shows a little bit of the state, like where our headspace is for us, for me at least, to kind of be thinking positively about this.
Right. It's
It
funny.
really says a lot about where we are as a country. in our culture.
because yeah, I guess because of whatever decade you play that clip in, it becomes a different picture. Like it means something different. Like now you're like, thank God they're not just like not curving. That one lady didn't just win and then curve the other person and to knock all their teeth
Yeah,
out. You know, you're glad. It's like, oh, awesome. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Congratulations. Thank you for not being horrible. And but I mean, they might just be friends. I mean, it's also not,
sure. But
might just be
even
friends
if
and they
that
decide they
is,
want to make a YouTube video. What if we just fight? Yeah, that'll work. Okay, well, I mean, we can't be bleeding or anything because our moms will get mad. But let's fight. I don't know.
I mean, who knows? But I think that things like this kind of, in a way, can show people an example of how to fight if you're going to. So whereas you have the guy who's like, "Hey, you just hit my car," and then you get out, and then they just completely beat this guy to a pulp. I mean, he got absolutely well beyond. It was not a fair fight. It was one guy who just beat the crap out of him with a mob around him who also participated. Um, and everybody's just like, yeah, let's go. It's whatever,
Yeah.
you know. It's this is fine. This is how we do it, you know. And it's like they're creating this new standard of violence. And then when you see stuff like this, it's kind of like, if you've got beef, if there's a problem, this is how. And it comes to actually having to fight. Like this is a better way to go,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Sure.
you know. But you know, it just kind of, I feel like when we see when all of this stuff keeps on coming out of um, everybody going over the top, everything that's happening is going over the top. It sets a societal wide environment that makes people think, I don't want to be that guy who gets pummeled so bad. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have
You're
to
gonna be crazy.
take
I'm
it
gonna
to
be
the
crazy.
extreme first.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to take it to the extreme first. So I see this kid and this guy, this tall kid. I'm 84 years old. I can barely see. You know, it's, you know what, 9 or 10 o'clock at night or whatever. Guy, black guy rings the doorbell. Is ding 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 ding. Hey, who knows the story? And then it's like,
And he shoots him. Yeah.
and then he shoots him, right? And it's like, that I think, more than likely, in my opinion, I think I don't count that as like a racist event.
It's
I
not.
feel
He
like,
was at his doorstep late at night. So
right.
it,
I feel like that's more of a societal environment that has created
yeah,
a
he,
level
he
of
definitely felt like
fear.
he had to defend himself.
And
I don't.
here's somebody who's
You
intruding.
get someone that is younger, more able-bodied, and not as threatened by it, then dude doesn't get shot there. Yeah, but it's
Yeah,
but if you're feeble and you're old like that, and you just have this is your way, I can see how that is a scenario, and I think that it should be known that that can happen. So don't
yeah. In
go
this
ringing
environment,
people's doors at 1 o'clock in the morning or whatever else.
but
Not
it's
just you know.
even so, like, okay, so the thing for me is, like, I don't want to tell people don't go ring and beat people's doorbells or driving into people's lawns so that you can do a U-turn, right? I think
Right.
that what should be addressed is, look at our culture and look at where we've gotten right now. We've gotten to a point where we're shooting people ringing doorbells. We've gotten to a point where we're shooting people in their driveways. We've gotten to a point where we're shooting people who ask us to stop shooting a gun. You know, maybe there's a little bit of an argument and somebody in a convenience store just shoots the guy. Like, these kinds of things are happening all the time. It's just like the levels of escalation are going up so much, and violence begets more violence. And when you create an environment that has violence being a peak action, a peak first step, right? you're going to end up with these kinds of situations. Now, that doesn't mean that this guy was, I mean, I may be able to understand why this guy shot. I don't have all the information, but under this context that I'm kind of fabricating here, I can understand why he would do what he did, right? But it doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it right at all. And
Yeah.
he may,
I don't remember all the details, but for the most part, I remember thinking that, it's a tragedy, but I don't blame the guy shouldn't go to jail or anything. I think it should just be a
I
fortunate
think
situation.
my personal opinion. I think I don't know. I don't have all the facts, but I think that if the fact is that he rang the doorbell and the guy opened the door and then shot him, even if he was scared, even regardless of the reason, I do think he should go to jail because
Yeah, I don't
otherwise,
know the scenario, obviously.
well,
If
if
it's just some
that's why I'm
random
just
guy
saying.
ringing the doorbell, but it's
That's why I'm just saying if that is because that's the story that's
but
kind of being put out.
that is always, but also all the stories during the BLM summer and stuff, of all the stories, there was always a sensational version of it, and there were, of like the six stories,
Yeah,
two of the stories are being completely made up, like the hands up, don't shoot situation. Like there wasn't
right,
actually that
right.
wasn't real. Like they add these things to it. Some of them are real, but then they when you make up bad facts, it makes it hard to know
It
what's real,
taints
what's not.
it taints the thing. But that's why I'm kind of talking about in this fabrication. Like I'm just kind of like taking here's what the story is, and if this is true, right? Because I don't know if it actually is.
Yeah, I
If the
only
guy was banging on the
I
door and
only
he
read
was
like
kicking it,
a
trying to
half
kick
a
it in.
paragraph about it. Like I said, I haven't cared much about news in the last week or so, and I
Sure.
just read it very briefly, and I didn't really look in the details of it. I just kind of was in the know for the story.
Well, the detail for my point, the details don't really matter. Like the facts of this actual
So you're saying
situation,
if, yeah,
they don't matter.
and I say
It's
if it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and because
he's trying to kick in the
a
door.
lot of times what criminals try to do is ring the doorbell to see if anyone's home. If no one ever answers, then they just break in.
Yeah,
So like ringing the doorbell just a sign of isn't just a sign of like, oh, I need to get your I'm not being secret, I'm announcing myself. Sometimes it's actually just because like if they don't answer this door, we know we can break into this one. So you
right,
don't necessarily know from his perspective, 84-year-old guy, um,
right,
if it's late at night, I don't necessarily think he's completely in the wrong. But yes,
right.
if it's
We don't know either way. We don't know either way, which is why I'm selecting this as far as the cultural and the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
mentality and
We're
how
accepting
these
different. Yeah.
events can play into the mindset and the headspace of the people, right? If this was something that if the facts of the matter are that he was an innocent kid, wasn't even trying to do anything, he didn't
Yeah.
actually do anything wrong, and he ended up getting shot, I
And a
think he
major
should go to
contributing
prison,
factor.
even regardless of this guy's
Right.
understanding, right? Regardless of whatever it is that he thought, because what we don't want is a society and a culture that has this level of acceptance that, hey, you know what, if somebody comes and knocks on my door, I'm able to shoot them, because that would be precedent setting, right? If
So
those were the facts, then it
sure,
could be somebody
if those
knocks
were the
on my
facts, then you
door.
don't do it. You don't show up unannounced. So I mean, there's an argument for that too. But I'm
Well,
thinking more
it's the
like
wrong house. I mean,
right.
I've knocked on an old woman's door, because there was a car that was parked outside that had the lights on,
Yeah.
and I didn't know if it was hers, if it was her car or not. Um, for me to have potentially been shot, right? That would
Yeah.
be right. But I mean, imagine
Depends
that
on the
this is
neighborhood, depends on all sorts of things. Yeah.
right. I mean, who knows? Who knows, right? And so it's like I think that we have to operate off of levels of precedent and what we do find acceptable. And
I
if
think
it
it
turned out,
I think this type of scenario actually speaks more to the headspace that society operates in. So like
yeah, that's what I'm talking
the
about.
the
Is that
great the greater
yeah,
narrative that exists that makes that 84-year-old man feel like he has to defend himself, or to
Right.
make, so it's like, I think,
They're two things that are it's
right.
two things that are colliding,
It's not just
right?
it's just not just individually the stats on the ground, but it's also the narrative, and if people are, and also in a specific, let's say if you have specific jurisdictions where there are people that are just not dealing with crime at all, and they know
Hmm.
that there's like no response time and no one's ever going to come, and maybe you just have way more of a defend my place attitude than you normally would. It all depends upon all sorts of different things.
But there has to
Like
be a
in my little
precedent.
neighborhood here, I wouldn't.
There has to be a precedent around it though too, right?
Sure,
Like if you just because I'm in my headspace and I'm interpreting the world a certain way doesn't give me
but there's
what were
certain
the
standards.
carte blanche? Is that the yeah to
Yeah,
just do whatever I think
you're
is
correct.
necessary, right?
You're correct. There's certain standards to go by, but I don't. I just okay. So I'm walking a line here, pushing between the idea that yes, I there needs to be standards, but I am very much like I wish everybody that was responsible had a gun. I wish it was more. I wish
Hmm.
people weren't afraid of them in a certain way. I wish that everyone were. I wish that people were forcibly had a hold of their tongue more, and they were more respectful to people as people, instead of just like it's
Hopes and dreams, yeah.
yeah,
Well, if
instead of
only.
just like, what, you disrespect me, and then like you decide to get rambunctious, and then but you don't know, like in the Wild West type of stuff,
You
where
brought your fist
there
to a
might be somebody
gunfight.
behind, you say, hey sir, you're stepping out of line, and so like I wish there was an accountability culture that basically it was built in. So that's my dream. And I don't like the idea of eliminating guns as a valid thing, and I think you should be able to protect yourself. But yes, there's a line of of how to make that appropriate in my mind. So I understand not everyone likes
Hmm.
guns. It's I have a concealed carry permit, and I have no problem with them myself, and I wish more
Yep.
people would carry.
Yeah. Well, I think that if it's almost if we ended up, so I think there is a point that a lot of conservatives and um, Republicans kind of make that I think is pretty valid. In if people knew that other people were very likely to have a gun,
Right.
then they would probably watch themselves a lot more.
I think they moderate their behavior a little bit.
Yeah,
I mean,
they wouldn't jump to these levels of escalation. Um, you know, and I think that there's a point to that, but it's also really scary to me to kind of like introduce that in a sense now when we have this culture of escalation, like go to the
yeah,
peak escalation point as your first move. I mean, I've seen videos of a guy who um, kicks a guy's car, and then he gets shot. And it's kind of
yeah,
like, that maybe what ends up needing to happen is that um, there is a high level, like a very high level of retaliation when people take it to this escalate.
yeah.
Like, hey, if you want to come at me, so say take the guy who ended up just getting pummeled because his car got hit and he got out and complained,
Right.
right? Now, take that situation and instead
He had a
of
gun in his
him
glove
getting
box.
he pulled out a gun, and as
Right.
the guy's charging him, he shoots and kills the guy.
Right. And guess
Right now,
what? The
that's a
guy with the gun
bad.
goes to jail.
Well,
Even though,
well, maybe
that's just
no.
how it is these days. That's the unfortunate part. I mean,
Well,
ideally,
if he's
he's
being
going to defend
attacked,
himself and then not
I
lose
don't
a
think he
night's sleep
would.
over it. But
I don't think he would. I think Kyle Rittenhouse effectively had set the precedent on that. If you're being rushed and attacked, and you shoot somebody,
but
that's
the thing
you're
is, you
within
have
self
to
defense.
have ironclad evidence with cameras. Like,
Well,
if you
in
don't
this
have cameras, then
situation,
it's gonna be like, I think that you shot him because you're racist, and that's all they have to do is like put doubt in your mind. It's just like,
sure. Well, I guess I'm talking about a situation. I'm using a specific situation to make the point, which
yeah,
includes video. So I guess I'm kind of like enveloping this whole situation and just kind of changing one detail that changes the overall outcome,
yeah,
and
okay,
that would then kind of like show. Because I mean, I feel like if we're playing around in if we're playing with hypotheticals and theoretical things, events that could potentially happen, we're going to have all kinds of like we can change it however we want so that it doesn't fit any point, right? We can
you're
work
right,
our way out of it, but
you're
that
right.
ends up kind of
Good
being
point.
useless. So that's why I'm kind of taking this
Okay, okay,
situation
okay.
and using it as a public example to say, hey, here's a public example where somebody was escalating things immediately, and there's one outcome, and then there's this outcome, and that other outcome would have had him beaten to a pulp, right? But in this outcome, he defends himself, and what that does is it signals to all of the public, hey, you know what? You can't just run at somebody and attack them because you might get shot.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and
I guess you make my point, and I was talking out of it, but yeah,
having that as a social conscious possibility that people have to consider, I think is possibly the way that things get back to a level of normalcy.
hmm
And I think that that's a tragic thing to even really consider, because that effectively means that there will be more people who are going to get killed in pursuit of civility.
I just love like the Leave It to Beaver type of days where like all the boys should have their rifle or shotgun on their back shoulder, walking to school, and they line them up underneath the coats, and then they come to shooting practice either during the day or hunting after school,
Yeah.
and like how um, you didn't have um, you know people murdering all of their classmates. You know, it wasn't a thing.
Well,
Um,
I wonder if we live in America, and in America we have, you know, we've got lots and lots of states, and all of these states have different laws, and they have different, and within all of each of these states there's cities, and then there's also towns, and within these towns you can have these kinds of situations. You can effectively recreate these things.
right.
It's possible.
I'm sure there's somewhere in Wyoming or something where it's not exactly like that, but but they like would have lockers that everyone puts their stuff in before they get on. They can't bring them on campus, but they have them so they can go afterwards to after school and practice. Maybe there's
Sure.
some places like that, and I don't know if that exists anymore. I
And
don't
if
live in
well
Wyoming or Montana, but
maybe it's something that should.
I think it'd be fine. I mean, I don't think it does make sense to just introduce that, just try to place that culture and just give everyone a gun right here, right now. I
No,
think
you'd
that's
have to
horrible.
it would have to
That'd be
be
horrible. There's so many
a
people that are
developed.
vindictive that just would just get mad and shoot people because they feel entitled. So like you have to nurture people from
Yeah.
kids
Yeah.
to be like that, and we pushed away from that so
Start in a
much. It's
small
hard to go back.
community. I mean, there's lots of small communities that are being built, and they could, hey, I'm of this mindset. We have the internet. Hey, I'm of this mindset, and I want to teach my kids this, guns. And you get on some board, and you say, hey, I want to move over here. And people can gravitate over to that area. Hey, I want to participate in this too. And it would almost be like a social experiment that people are participating in.
Yeah,
Um,
it's hard.
but it's hard. It would be very
I think a
difficult to
pipe
develop
dream, and
that.
it's very
Yeah.
it would be more and more niche, even if it exists right now, because um, we don't have the social culture for it. We have places that are wide open, that are country, that are like large areas of Texas where there aren't any people. Real honestly, where you drive forever, there's just like you have little small towns, and you have all, and like you said, Wyoming and Colorado, these different places that have these, or Montana, or whatever. Or rather not Colorado, but yes, you can have pockets of that, and it's a small portion of the number of people that are in the country.
See, to get back,
It would be like 200,000 people out of the 375 million people. You know, it's going to be not that many people, honestly.
it would have to be something that would start small. But kind of getting back to Headspace and managing the perspective, that would be a way to manage your
I
perspective.
guess so. And then you could have, it, you see, if you had more shows like Yellowstone that weren't quite so evil,
Yeah,
or where they're
you have to have
where they're
something
showing
that
how,
sets an example.
right. I guess you do when like Longmire. Have you seen Longmire? It's a show. It's a
I
cop
don't,
drama
not
kind of
really.
thing.
Yeah,
It's good.
I've seen clips. I'm sure.
I mean, it's a little cop show, but it's like it's honor and like old school values. But this guy, obviously, it's very niche, very
Yeah,
niche. Um, I don't know. That's just a dream. It's a dream that we could be in a place where that's okay.
yeah,
In the world today, I guess to bring all this to a head, I was thinking of how you can take the idea perspective and scale it out to everything with dealing with people's positions in politics, and it can deal with like how healthy some people are not even mentally healthy enough to have gone through and made choices about with anybody else's perspective in mind other than their narrow focus of trying to fix me. And so when you have I think that we have a problem where we focus on we have people, everyone focusing on individual needs, and then people that are mentally not able to sort things out themselves, and then we're
yeah.
like you're supposed to just accept like to say yes to everything they say.
It's
So
the
that
acceptance culture.
right,
Yeah, that
we're
we've
supposed to say yes
developed.
to everything they say, and like that's I mean it's when people are not in the right space or they haven't had sufficient time, they don't feel like they're being attacked or they don't feel like they have to defend themselves or their way of life, whatever else. They need to be able to develop a sane plan and a sane something. So during these times, and they need to be productive about it instead of just lashing out and making rash decisions about things. And so I guess that's part of where I didn't really have a smooth way to get there, but that was when I was my brain was going through all this earlier today, thinking about my perspective, not really epiphany because I've kind of had this type of thing before, but that's where my brain went to today when I was starting to feel a little bit of lift and a little bit of okay about the world since I physically don't feel bad. I just have this throat and breathing issue right now, right? It's not as bad as feeling like death. Um, so, anyways, I'm just saying that a lot of people have opinions out there, and we got to think about, and we should think about ourselves individually. Are we making that decision based upon just how we feel, or is it something we thought about that is actually a good thing for society? And so that's kind of like the the big point. If I were to draw up some sort of site map or something to the thought process of this idea, that's where I would have brought it to. Something along those lines.
Yeah, I was getting a call, and I was really hoping that that the call audio wasn't coming through. I was really hoping you
Oh,
didn't hear
I
any.
didn't hear their voice.
It was just the ring. So unfortunately, it was. It
Oh,
didn't.
It's whatever.
Maybe you didn't. It didn't. You if you
No,
didn't
I
hear
think
it,
so.
hopefully the recording
This
didn't hear it.
isn't hugely formal. We're not wearing suits, so we're sitting in bedrooms. I think we're okay.
Yeah.
And like think last time there was an ice cream truck playing going outside my window.
Yeah. I mean, I just didn't want it to be like, oh, here's do 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 for
Oh, that
like
wasn't. I
a
didn't hear that.
minute.
I can
So
just tell that you're fiddling around with the keyboard because you were trying to figure it out.
yeah. Um. So I guess
We don't have to force a full hour. If we wrap it up, we can
yeah.
talk a little afterwards.
I'm kind of just trying to I want to wrap it up in another way is because we were kind of talking about, other people's opinions and their vision on things, and this acceptance, and how like people aren't really being people aren't really considerate of how other people want to live. Like they will put their priority over other people, and it's kind
And
of
over
it's an
all
interesting.
people. It's like
Yeah,
it matters so much. It's the imperative
yeah, and
over life
it's
on
so,
earth.
like, so much so that they will break down, like they will be like massively offended, right? And I think a lot of it kind of has to do with like in the trans and non-binary crowd, like those types. And so I think that
They've got a big issue to deal with. It's a hard.
they do. And
I do not. Man, that is like it would be hard to think about anything else if that were your struggle. If that were your
if
struggle,
that's what you
trying to
made your
figure out
struggle,
what I am in this world and who I am, it's pretty rough. It's pretty rough to see things through any other lens, and so that's tough. I just
I
I'll
get
still
it.
disagree probably with
I get that it
what
is
the
that
solution
it's a
is, but
difficult thing, but I also feel like trying to if you're trying to figure yourself out, that's one thing. If you're trying to if you believe that you figured yourself out and you're trying to make everyone else accept
sure,
what it
yeah,
is that you
that's the issue.
figured out, I think you're taking things a step too far.
Yeah. So it's just a
People
matter of, I guess it's a matter of if they are, we've probably said this before, but if they are, if they've actually figured it out, or are they trying to prove it to themselves that they figure it out by
they're
making
seeking
you accept them?
validation.
Like, are they trying to make themselves believe it by having everyone else believe it
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and it's hard. It's what I'm not trying to hate on anybody that has issues. Like I said, I just don't want to reorder the whole all of society in order to try to solve people's little personal crisis. Not little personal crisis. I don't mean to make it small, but I mean uh, little in comparison to like changing everything. You know,
Yeah.
um, changing everything for all of society.
Well,
So yeah,
they want to change all of society in order to fit them and their
yeah,
worldview. And when you try to do that, I think it's effectively um I think that concept and everything is, I think it's going to go out in a big ball of flames, because effectively what they're basically trying to do is say, this is my worldview, accept it, validate it, and then you look at the next person and they say, this is my worldview and it's different from that
yeah.
person, and they say, accept it and validate it, and then they do that to the next and the next and the next, and eventually you
So
just have so many different worldviews that are all trying to be validated society wise or society wide. And then when they eventually kind of discover, oh, these are not compatible, like when
yeah,
people actually kind of, like, the conversation hasn't even, like, culturally and nationally began with non-binary people and trans people, that there's a complete contradiction in that. And so there's
there is.
like there's not even a we haven't even hit that point yet. And so I think it's like, oh, when the trans people are like, okay, we're finally validated and we finally get
So
what we want,
I
they're
think
going to crop up. And then now there's going to be this massive, and and
I
I don't
think
know
that
how they're going
I
to
think with
resolve that.
with this sexualizing of children part into it, that's the part where they're going to lose everybody. In essence, I mean, like not everybody, but meaning like if you're trying to make
I
a
think it's
push,
going to tame it. I think
yeah,
it's going to
if you're
tame
going
it.
to push, if they're going to push for some sort of normalization or some sort of a level of acceptance or not being denigrated, I think that was a doable task. But since it's been pushed to the level of sexualizing children and um, that's where the fight has started. That's where like you see massive resistance and legislation coming into place because people are like,
It's also a different conversation though.
I guess so.
I think it's
I
a
guess so,
completely
but
different
I don't know
conversation.
why it has to be sexualized always anyways. I don't know why someone's personal identity has to revolve around having, sexual type of like why are all the pride marches like giant dildos and people pretending to dry hump and stuff? Why? I mean, why does that have to be part of uh, accepting anything, anyone's lifestyle? Why does it have to be sexualized in public like that? I don't get it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean I think that that's one that's going to actually I think that's one that's going to be easier to resolve
that's
than
what I'm saying. I think they pushed too far when they went that direction because
yeah.
they're gonna lose support because that it does make sense to not sexualize everything and especially with children. I think
But
that's
there's
what they did.
also the drag isn't I don't believe that the drag is actually making the attempt to say that we are women. Like that's a
Well, drag. You
different
mean original drag versus the trans thing now?
even yeah, well, I mean even the like drag queen story hour, like anything that has to do with drag queens, like those I think everybody universally accepts these are men. They're not going
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
by like
They're
I
men,
mean
and it
maybe
was
they
a
play with
use
she her
sexual play to
pronouns.
be opposite, and
Sure,
that's what it
it's
was.
more of a of it's not it like they know that it's a fun thing, right? And they're trying to promote this thing as being a fun thing, but it's very strange they're targeting this adult fun thing towards children.
Yeah,
That's a very strange thing. But the trans thing is more like the problem that often comes in that is like it's I mean kind of one of the baselines of it is quotes is or typical lines is trans women are women, but
yeah. It's
what does that mean? Okay, then if trans women are women, then you mean to say that women are women. But if you mean trans women are women when you say women are women, and I mean women are women
I
when
see.
I'm talking about
I don't
women
think we're ever going to
actually
win
being,
that.
we start confusing
Yeah.
language and we don't know
So
what we're saying to each other
I don't
anymore.
think that's a convincing argument for them because they're just saying words because they feel a certain way. They're trying to say words that may, if you start breaking down logic, it doesn't make sense. I think that they know
What
it
kind of
doesn't
a
make
world do we
sense.
live in when when we can't make sense of things using logic?
I think they know it doesn't make sense, but and I'm not concerned personally about
I guess it's a losing argument
yeah. Well, what I'm saying is I'm
for
not
them. Yeah.
yeah. I think that they know. And I don't think that's where we should argue. We should say, hey, you're an adult and you can live your life. We just want to keep children out of it, and we want to preserve society as it exists. And you can live within the society. You don't get to redefine what society is. And
That
so
gets to be
that's I
difficult
think what the
though.
fight needs to be. Just be like, hey, okay, we have certain ways we found to be successful throughout history, and these are the ways that we're going to promote for our
But they're
children to
not
get
going to
through.
listen to that.
I
They're not going to listen to that at all. They're going to go ahead and they're going to say,
but
no, trans women, they're going to say women, they're going to say um, men can get pregnant. Like that's what they're
yeah,
going to say.
it's we just have to be. I think we just the people that know that that's not true need to actually stand up for it. And I think we have the numbers. It's just that there are too many
It's a
people
so
that
there
work for
needs to be the conversation
yeah,
that
there are people that work
happens.
for corporations that can't do that, or they'll get fired, or whatever else. All that stuff. There needs to be
A
everybody
turning
that
point.
says, "Hey, we're going to call a spade a spade. We're not trying to hate anybody. We just
Yeah,
let them, let adults do what they want to do, but we're not going to pretend all this stuff." And that's just it's,
I agree.
I know plenty of people. I know plenty of people. I think we just have to put our foot down in some sense. Like we can
Somebody has to.
be human to everybody, be cool to everybody, but like you're not going to make me admit that now you are a girl or now you are a guy. It's just like individually a person. I may choose to use their pronouns if I happen to know them really well, to use whatever pronouns I want to do. I may do it on a personal basis, um, but not just be getting some random person trying to hold me hostage to the language. Like it's just not happening. It's
Yeah.
like there's no
It's
reason
it
to do
just
that.
it becomes difficult when your career and your reputation is on the line, and because what you don't want is people taking you and just throwing labels at you and using these labels and contacting your employer and saying
Right.
this is who you are, and even though there's no real evidence, but there's that reputational damage. um, and so I think that they have that power and ability right now. And I think that that at some point needs to change. Hopefully that will change soon. um,
Yeah.
but I think we've hit our hour. I think that
Yep.
was a very solid, awesome, interesting conversation.
It's good.
Um,
I'm glad I did it. I just said I hope that I'm glad my voice held up. I had no voice yesterday. It was completely hoarse.
yeah.
And
Well, get some more rest, and we can maybe give this another shot tomorrow.
yep.
Hopefully,
As long as
we
I
didn't
have a
wear
voice,
your
I'll do it.
voice.
I mean, if it's as good as it is right now, we'll do it again. Like I said, if I don't have a voice, we can't. But
Sounds good.
I'm going to like I said, I'm committed to trying to do this to practice and learn how to communicate better and as a process. And I don't want to just like let it fade away or something because of I make a million excuses. You know, it's easy to make an excuse to not do things, and that's why even sometimes like when I want, even sometimes when I should maybe make an excuse, like last week, at first my impulse is not to do it, but then like you said like you know what, okay fine, I won't do it today. You're right, but
Yeah,
like it's hard
I'll
because
give you I'll try to give you outs when I guess it's appropriate. When you say I'm shivering under the covers, I think
it
let's
was.
let him get some rest. I don't need to do this.
I was trying to shiver it off. I was trying to get into there, trying to burn out all the shivers to make the fever subside so I could get on. But
Yeah,
it was it would have been kind of taxing. I'm glad
yeah.
I didn't do it that day. So
All right. Well,
all right,
I'm gonna end this. Thanks everybody for sticking around and making it this far. Hopefully it was interesting for you. Like and subscribe if you even made it this far. Take it easy.